Hello and welcome to another video. Today I'll be showing you how to make bass house in the style of Chris Lorenzo. This project will be made available for free below the video, as will the samples and presets for non-Ableton users. The 3 bass presets used in this project from my brand new Modern Bassline Serum preset pack. I'll talk more about the pack at the end of the video, but it is linked in the description. Make sure to smash that like button and subscribe if you want to support the channel. There are a few videos by other YouTubers which have helped educate me with regards to making this style, so I'll link these tutorials in the description to credit these creators. Our BPM is 130. We're not really in a key, and as we'll see from the bass lines, there's a chromatic feel to the loop, which is 8 bars in length. This is our kick drum. I couldn't quite emulate the knocky kick Lorenzo uses in Gammy Elbow, so went for a sample closer to Hallucinogen. We have a 4 to the floor kick pattern. Then we have this reverse kick, which plays at the end of the loop and is made from the same kick. I'll just play it in context. On the kick group, we have drum bus to increase the transient. And an EQ, mainly removing sub and mid-range to make room for the basses. Next, we have our clap. Which is hitting on the 2nd and 4th beats until the final bar. I've tightened the clap using the ADSR settings within Simpler and pitched the sample up. This is because I noticed the claps in Lorenzo's tracks sounded quite tight and bright. We have saturator and drum bus, which help thicken the clap, and then an EQ to remove lows. We have the high drums. These are comprised of an open hat, shaker, and closed hat. Some of these have been pitched around and all of them have been panned. I've used an EQ to remove a resonance from the open hat. The shaker is interesting as it's a short loop that's not quantized, meaning it gives the percussion a slightly wonky feel. We have drum bus for character and then an EQ removing lows. Let's take a look at the MIDI. Then we have this drum fill. I'll just play this in context. We have some drum bus adding drive and more of a transient, and an EQ8 mainly to de-emphasize the snare's fundamental. If we reveal the MIDI, we can see that we are using some triplet-based rhythms. And this is the first hint at some of the triplet rhythms present throughout the project. The MIDI for the claps, high drums, and snare fill utilizes this groove in the groove pool. The groove is triplety, but since Lorenzo's drums are very straight, the application of the groove is fairly minimal. Then we have the reverb clap. Which is a bit of ear candy at the end of the loop. We have some longish reverb at 40% wet and an EQ8. On the drums bus, we have some reverb via Sendai, which is using this short empty club preset. I'll just play all the drums together. Next, we have the basses. For all these basses, I'm using a multi-band processing technique, which I will link a more in-depth video explaining on the screen, but I'll give a quick overview for newer viewers. For example, in bass one's instrument rack, we have a sub, which is just a sine wave, and we've used an EQ3 at the end of the chain to split the frequency areas at 100 hertz. If we look at the top, mid bands, I've activated the EQ3 between 100 and 1000 hertz. And then for the highs, everything above 1000 hertz. What I'm doing here will become a bit clearer as I show you examples. So we have bass 1. For the top patch, oscillator A is a sine wave, which has been taken down by 2 octaves. FM from B is turned up, and oscillator B is also a sine wave. The level of oscillator B has been taken down to 0. We have a low pass filter with its cutoff being modulated by LFO1 in envelope mode. The LFO shape is crucial to these type of basses. The filter has a fair amount of resonance and lots of drive. The voicing is monophonic, as it is for all the bass sounds in this project. In the FX, we have a hyper dimension, adding some detuning and width, and lots of distortion. Distortion is important when designing these types of basses. If I turn the distortion off, you can hear how much it alters the sound. I am, however, using the filter within the distortion to ensure the drive doesn't create harsh high frequencies. On the chain, we have an amp for more distortion. We have an audio effects rack, which has been split with overdrive to emphasize the mid-range, alongside a monoed utility to ensure the sound is mono-compatible for club systems, and then the EQs on each chain, like I mentioned before. For the sub, we have a single sine wave, which has been taken down by 2 octaves. On the chain, we have a compressor for consistency. Then we have an EQ3 to split the frequencies. On the channel, we have an EQ8, removing some muddy mids. Then I have a utility, which, if I reveal the automation, shows I'm decreasing the volume at the end of notes of the bass so that they don't overlap with the other basses. For the MIDI, we just have some G sharps played at the beginning of every odd numbered bar. So bars 1, bars 3, and bars 5 and 7 as well. For bass 2, we'll start with the top. Oscillator A is a square wave, which has been increased by 1 octave. The warp menu knob is set to asymmetry plus and is being modulated by LFO1, which is set to envelope mode. Again, you can see we have the slightly odd shape. LFO1 is also modulating the level of oscillator A and oscillator B. Oscillator B is this PWM waveform, which has been increased by 7 semitones. Creating chords within these patches is one of the key sound design techniques when making these types of basses. This time, the warp menu is set to bent plus minus and is being modulated by LFO1, as is the level. We have a very short pluck-shaped amp envelope with a slow attack. Then we have a low-pass filter with its cutoff being modulated by LFO2, which has a different rate and shape to LFO1, but it's still in envelope mode. There's lots of drive on the filter. In the effects, we have a hyper dimension, distortion, and then an EQ to remove some harsh frequencies. On the chain, we have more distortion via an amp and a saturator. Then we have the mid band with overdrive, a mono utility, and an EQ3. The high band has an overdrive and an EQ3. The sub is a pure sine wave again, which has been taken down by 2 octaves. On the chain, we have a compressor and an EQ3. Then I have removed a bit of harshness with EQ8. For the MIDI, we have this triplety pattern, which mainly plays G, and there's a G sharp there as well. These bass triplet rhythms are a characteristic of some of Lorenzo's productions, such as Gammy Elbow and Hallucinogen. For bass 3, for the top, we are using the sub oscillator, which is a square wave which has been taken down by 2 octaves. The oscillator's level has also been reduced. Oscillator A is this add fourths waveform, which has been taken down by 2 octaves. You can see FM from B in the warp menu. Oscillator B is a sawtooth waveform and has been taken up by 2 octaves and 2 semitones. Effectively, we're making another chord, especially as oscillator A adds fourths. We have a similar amp envelope to the previous patch. The level of oscillator B has also been turned all the way down. Then we have a low pass filter with its cutoff being modulated by LFO1 on envelope mode. Again, there's lots of drive. In the effects tab, we have hyper, distortion, and EQ. Mids and highs have been split again with a mono utility, an EQ3 on the mid bands, and an EQ3 on the high bands. Again, we have a sine wave taken down by 2 octaves for the sub, again with compression and EQ3, and then the utility on the channel so that this bass doesn't clash with the other basses. For the MIDI, we have this chromatic pattern which rounds out every second bar. On the bass bus, we have an EQ removing rumble and low mids and a chorus. Then we have this rack where I've used EQ3s to split the frequency areas like I did to process the basses, and used this rack to sidechain the low frequencies using the kick. Then we have reverb applied via send A. Next, we have this riser. Just play that in context. This is a white noise riser. And then I've used the clip transposition to increase its pitch over time. On the channel, we have some saturation, utility, bass monoing, and EQ removing low frequencies. And then we have reverb applied via send A. We have these whoops and whoop effects. One is this straight whoop, and then we have this one I made using reverse reverb. Both have similar processing using saturator and drum bus. And then on the group, we have an EQ8 to remove some nasty high frequencies and a longish reverb to create more of a sense of space. Then we have these hey shouts. which just have some drum bus applied. I'll solo the vocals group so you can hear everything together. And on the vocals group, we have EQA and reverb applied via send A. So that is it for the tutorial. So my new modern bassline Serum preset pack contains 30 of the type of basses covered in this video. Many of the patches have macros for easy tweaking, and the pack contains top and bass patches for every preset, as well as Ableton racks for ease of use. The pack is available on my Bandcamp, and there is a link in the description. Thanks for watching and supporting, and I will see you in the next video.